In today's video, we are going to talk about the biggest concern the Baltimore Ravens have heading into training camp, regrets the Ravens might have in the future, and what the hell is going on with athletes today.
What the hell's going on out here?
All this and more coming up.
Don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. Now, if you're around me and you got to move when I move, how do you expect to keep a marriage?
Now. We are going to start this video off today with an article that came out from Bleacher Report talking about blockbuster contracts that teams might regret. And of course, to my surprise, I'm not sure about yours, they mentioned Lamar Jackson, talking about how his contract in the future going forward may limit the team in signing free agents and bringing in prospects that can help this team potentially win another Super Bowl. To me, all this was ludicrous. And the first thing I did when I saw hints of this article was I went to Bleacher Report to actually look up to see who else was on this list. The first thing that came to my mind was, you mentioned Lamar Jackson. I know when I look at this, I better see Trevor Lawrence's name on this list. Number one, first and foremost. Because to me, no other quarterback that has gotten big money outside of maybe Kyler Murray has done less to become one of the top paid quarterbacks in the league. But as far as Lamar Jackson goes, it was kind of mind-boggling to me that the face of a franchise, the person or individual that makes this team relevant, the one guy that gets us onto primetime, the guy that has gotten us for the upcoming season the most primetime standalone games in the NFL, the Ravens are going to regret signing him to a massive deal. There are teams all across the NFL that have signed their quarterbacks to big paydays. I don't know how Lamar Jackson is any different from some of these other quarterbacks making big money. Statistically, Lamar Jackson is what makes this offense go. The Ravens don't have any star players that can take over a game outside of Lamar Jackson. Without him, and we've seen this for 2 seasons, if Lamar Jackson does not play, this team does not win. So to include him on this list, of course, it's that media bias that they love kicking about when it comes to our quarterback. My question to them is, what were the Ravens supposed to do? Were they supposed to do what Bucky Brooks said and go in and restart all over again like a college team, draft a young quarterback and hope that he can man the Baltimore Ravens in the iteration that it is today? Because to me, I can't think of any quarterbacks out there with the level of skill that we have across the offensive side of the ball that can take this team to the heights that Lamar Jackson has. Not to say they are not great quarterbacks, but to work with a lot less offensively, I don't think that they could do the things that he did. And not to mention, this is still, to my summation, checking my watch, a 2-time MVP. So you have a 2-time MVP who has been grossly underpaid for the majority of his career for what he brought to an organization. Now you're going to regret signing him to a massive deal? I just don't get it. But they did not stop there. They added a second Baltimore Raven to this list, that being Justin Madubuike. Now the Ravens just re-signed Justin Madubuike to a $98 million contract, coupled this in with the Roquan Smith deal, and they said, hey, the Ravens aren't going to have a lot of money to play with going forward, and they are instantly going to regret re-signing Justin Madubuike, being last season was his first season that he's had over 6 sacks, and his first season that he actually recorded a forced fumble. I had to actually run and check that out because I'm like, it's no way. He could have been in the league 4 years and this is his first forced fumble cause, and it really was. Hopefully, for us Ravens fans, we hope that he can replicate or come close to what he has done this previous season. Some of us think that it may have been too much money to spend on one person where they could have divvied this up and brought it around. I kind of agree with the Justin Madubuike one, but to have Lamar Jackson on this list, ludicrous. But all things being fair, they had Justin Herbert on this list as well. But when we speak of Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, they have not done half of the things that Lamar Jackson has done. Yes, they're projecting for the future how good these guys can be. We don't know, but up until now, what have they done? Each quarterback has made it to the playoffs one time. That's it. Made no noise, won no awards, and quite frankly have not elevated their teams to the status that Lamar Jackson has with the Baltimore Ravens. And speaking of big money deals, right now the Baltimore Ravens have about $5 million left in cap space for the foreseeable future unless they make some moves. One move that was brandished about was maybe the Baltimore Ravens should sign Brandon Stephens to an extension. Brandon Stephens has gotten better year in and year out, especially since the Ravens have left him alone and let him play just one position in particular. Arguably, not arguably, Stevens was the best cornerback on the Baltimore Ravens last season. He has had his battles with some of the better wide receivers and has won the majority of the time. So do the Ravens extend him and free up about $1 million in cap space, or do they let him play the year out and possibly get a little bit more expensive? This is one question that we have to ask, because next season is going to be a very pivotal season. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered. So could extending Brandon Stevens this season be one of those answers? Me personally, I say do it. I know the Ravens just drafted TJ Tampa and they drafted Nate Wiggins. Don't know really what's going on with the Marlon Humphrey situation, but I do think when you have a good young player that has remained healthy for his career, you need to sign him, because I said this before during the NFL draft this year. Even though the Ravens drafted 2 cornerbacks this season, what's going to happen is Brandon Stevens and or Marlon Humphrey are going to leave this offseason, and what are we going to do in the draft next year? We're going to go back in the draft and draft a first-round cornerback all over again. So to kind of quell the desire to bring in another first-round cornerback, I think that the Ravens should re-sign him right now, save a little bit of money. And not to be outdone by that contract, what are the Ravens going to do about the Mark Andrews situation? Now, Mark Andrews next season is supposed to have a $7 million salary, but it's going to count $16.9 million versus the cap for the next 2 seasons. Are the Ravens willing to take those 2 cap hits for an aging player who, quite frankly, has not been the Mark Andrews since his All-Pro season? Now, he is Lamar Jackson's most trusted pass catcher, but a lot of people seem to think that Isaiah Likely is the inevitable successor, and right now he should be given the opportunity to be on the field a little bit more. So does this take Mark Andrews out the equation? What are the Ravens going to do? Should they also sign Mark Andrews to another extension, lowering his cap hits for the next couple of seasons and actually keeping him in Baltimore? Or should they just move forward with Isaiah Likely and hope that Charlie Kolar can come in and be that second tight end? The Ravens have a lot of moves that they need to consider. And I know that 2025 is not here yet, but things that we do this season is ultimately going to affect the team going forward. Because let us not forget, and I don't think that a lot of people really thought about this, but when Ronnie Stanley restructured his deal, he could possibly become a free agent at the end of the season. So now, not only will we be down a cornerback, have a decision with a starting tight end, we're going to have to figure out what to do with our left tackle. Now, while we segment over to the offensive line, that brings me to the Baltimore Ravens website, their late for work segment as of this morning. There was an article that they put out that said Jeff Zrebiec said the biggest concern for the Baltimore Ravens heading into training camp is filling the defensive holes from all the players that they lost this past offseason. I saw this and I thought that I was dreaming. Like, I really started rubbing my eyes and was like, am I seeing this correctly? That's the biggest concern? All of these high-paid defensive players, these high draft picks, and we're concerned about the defense? Yes, they lost a lot of key pieces. They lost Jadeveon Clowney. They lost Patrick Queen. They lost Geno Stone. They lost Ronald Darby. Yes, they lost pieces, but they have pieces waiting in the wing. They have younger players. And the one thing for me that has never been a concern is the Baltimore Ravens defense. I don't care who comes or who goes. I know that the Ravens are going to be in the top half of the NFL when it comes to statistics and scoring defense. So to me, the defense is not really a concern. The only concern that you may have with them is how dominant can they be? How are they going to overcome what happened with Mike McDonald leaving and some other defensive coaches departing? But there has never been a question through all the turnover and turmoil for the last 10 seasons. How is this Ravens defense going to man up? The biggest question heading into training camp should be, what are we going to do about this offensive line? The offensive line to me is the biggest concern, not only of training camp, of the season. And we've talked about this. I've talked about this. Other people in their podcasts or YouTube channels have talked about this as well. The Ravens offensive line is in flux. They are replacing 3/5 of their offensive line. But more importantly, the one thing that is not being discussed is the continuity between them all. Yes, Andrew Voorhees can come in and he can ball out. Ben Cleveland can play well. Roger Rosengarten can come in and hold down the fort. But how well do they play together? How are they going to react to stunts and twists in defensive schemes that confuse the offensive line? What's the communication going to be like? That's the biggest thing. They have not played a single game together. 60% of this offensive line has never touched the field together in an NFL game. So how are they going to protect the greatest asset that the Baltimore Ravens have? Because if we lose that one asset, the season is over. We can replace a guard. We can replace a tackle. We can replace a running back. You cannot replace Lamar Jackson. So to me, how are they going to play together? That is the biggest question going forward into training camp. All right, I need somebody, anybody, tell me what the hell is going on with NFL players today. Now, I know this is nothing new, but there seems to have recently been a rash of NFL players getting in trouble with the law. To me, it blows my mind. I'm not understanding, especially coming from a person that is not wealthy, a person that doesn't have money, a person that did not get an opportunity to live out my dream. You have a handful of fringe players, guys that's on the practice squad, guys going in for tryouts, guys that have been signed to future deals, going in and just doing the dumbest things ever. And I will never understand this. I never could understand this. Back in the day, I was left confused when I used to think about how many players would fail a drug test for the NFL Combine. It is the same time each and every year. I understand you have a habit. Sometimes you can't beat those vices, but you know, February, whatever, the NFL Combine is coming up and I have to take a drug test. You're telling me that you have this opportunity to possibly land on some team and become a 100,000-aire overnight, but you can't put that joint down. You can't stop putting that stuff in your nose for a little while. Guess what? You get to the NFL, you make the money, you have enough money to buy whatever the hell it is that you're using. But I digress. And now in the past week, we've had 3 NFL players that have been released from their teams. The first, starting off, and the most confusing one to me, is Isaiah Buggs, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs. They just released him the other day because he ran afoul of the law not once, but twice. The first incident came where he left 2 dogs abandoned on a back porch. They seemed to be malnourished and mistreated. He was already under investigation for that. And we know from the Michael Vick situation, when you start messing with animals, your career ain't going nowhere good. So he's like, can top that off. Watch me. And ironically, on Father's Day, he allegedly, gotta say the word allegedly so you don't get in trouble, he allegedly used a tire iron and broke into an apartment, then dragged the mother of his kids down some steps. Now, not only do you have an animal abuse charge, you have a domestic violence charge. And you were not even the starter on a team. You were on the practice squad. Yes, you've been in the league for a while, you've got called up a couple of times, but now you possibly have no chance to make it back to the NFL ever again in your life. You've taken away your livelihood. I don't care how much practice squad players make. I know they make at least $100,000. And the fruits of the labors, especially being on the Kansas City Chiefs, you got a Super Bowl ring. So now all of this is gone, and for what? I tell people, you can't afford to have it, don't get it. If you're not making that much money, don't get an animal, because that's another mouth to feed. Don't leave them abandoned and abused, or don't get them at all in the first place. And your child's mother dragging her by her hair down the steps, yo, I don't care what's going on between you and your lady, there is never a time to abuse a woman. And then we move on to the next guy that got in trouble, because you would think after seeing this one guy in the news, you'd be like, you know what, it could be my turn next. But of course, everyone always thinks it's never going to be me. It's always them, it's not going to be me. And then we bring up Cleveland Browns defensive lineman Lonnie Phelps. He was an undrafted free agent, so he didn't even get that draft money. Wasn't guaranteed a spot on the roster. He was actually on the practice squad. Now this gentleman and his lady were out having a good time, and listen, I understand you may not be making millions, but I guarantee you, you're making enough to get an Uber. You're making enough money to get somebody to drive you around. But what does he do? He gets a driving while intoxicated charge and crashes into a restaurant. You can't make this stuff up. He didn't just drive over the lines or tag a car or something like that. This man drove into a restaurant. So now you are not only released from your team and not making that NFL money anymore, you hit a restaurant where the estimated value, at least from the restaurant owner's estimation, $300,000. But even if it's not that much, you're gonna pay some money. Your license is suspended and you don't have a job. Like, I don't understand. And I'm not even saying if you were a starter or you made an inordinate amount of money for a team that you should be doing these things, but especially if you are on the verge of not even making a team, why put that negative publicity out there? Because now teams aren't going to touch you in the future. And then when I thought that was the last person for this week, I mean, I figured something was going to happen later on, but this week, the Jets released cornerback Tay Hayes. And for some of you Ravens fans, Tay Hayes was a former Raven. Like, he was here briefly, been on like 6 or 7 teams, but he got arrested with marijuana charges. Another undrafted free agent that was on the practice squad. What is going on with the practice squad? What's up with the practice squad, people? Like, geez, it's the off season. Smoke the weed in your house. Smoke the weed in a legal state. I don't know. Don't drive around with it in your car. And if you're gonna make a pickup for it, send somebody else to get it. Like, I don't understand how you put your livelihood in jeopardy. But there are millions of us that would love to be in your position, that would love to play for a team, that would love to have that NFL experience. You're throwing it all away for what? Silly shit. I don't get this. They say when you know better, you do better. That's a lie. these young men know better, but yet and still they've done the thing that cost them their jobs. Well, we'll just wait for the next one. And to end off this episode, we're going to talk about Angel Reese. And I know we don't talk a lot on here about the WNBA, but I watched the WNBA game. I haven't been able to watch many of them because cut the cord in ESPN, they do some funny stuff that they don't allow me to watch games unless I have a cable provider. Weak sauce. I watched the WNBA game between the Indiana Fever and the Chicago Sky. When I say this has been one of the best games that I've seen in a long time, it is one of the best games that I've seen. Indiana went up by 15 points, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, Caden Clark notches another win. But Smith scored a basket, and she hit Angel with that too small gesture. And when she hit her with that gesture, Angel Reese's eyes just was like, bet. One of the Twin Powers activate, form of unstoppable. And after that point, Angel Reese took off, brought her team back for a 1-point win, extending her streak of 8 double-doubles. And I know for a lot of people, they're like, oh, it's just 8 straight double-doubles. She's a rookie. This is the WNBA, and things like this don't happen very often. She is 1 double-double shy of tying the record with Candace Parker for the most consecutive double-doubles in league history. She finished that game with 25 points, career high, and 16 rebounds. And I know people are going to jump in here and be like, you only talk about it because she's from Baltimore. Yeah, I am from Baltimore. You got to prop up the home people. If you don't know, or if you're not from Baltimore, crabs in the barrel mentality. We'd love to drag each other down around here. So if I get an opportunity to uplift anyone from in this area, I'm going to do it. So shout out to Angel Reese. Shout out for that victory. Now the Chicago Sky are in the playoffs as of right now. Still some games left. They have the 8th and final seed at this point. But I just wanted to shout out my Chicago Sky. Shout out to them. But I think they play the Las Vegas Aces next. And both of those are my team. So I'm not even going to watch that game. But I hope that Angel Reese gets an opportunity to tie the all-time record streak with her and my baby Candace Parker. Well deserved. Shout out to them. All right, appreciate y'all for rocking out with your boy. Another video down. Got some in the wings. Hope you all enjoyed the Brett Favre video. It's gonna be more coming like that, whether you like it or not. It's just a pivot. So make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you are aware when I come out with new videos, especially the off the Baltimore Ravens topic videos. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Let them know, like, hey, we ain't got nothing to watch on TV. Let's just watch this. Let's get Hendo those likes. Let's get Hendo those views. Subscribe. Let's get that 5,000. Trying to hit 5,000 before the start of the NFL season. I need you all to help me get there. So until the next video, you already know, it's your boy.